UK businesses are already paying the price for rushing AI into messy systems. So recent research found UK mid-market companies spend an estimated 11.7 billion a year correcting AI-related errors. So with IT teams losing around a quarter of their time to AI noise, errors, and added complexity. For retailers, that's a warning sign. Agentic AI only creates value if the data that sits underneath it is trusted, connected, and ready to support action. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Andy Tudor, CEO of Clekt.
Thank you, Tom. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Pleasure to have you. And I think for the uninitiated, obviously, we're very familiar with each other's businesses, but would you give everyone a little introduction to Clekt and what you do and the key things you stand for?
Yeah, pleasure. So Clekt is a data AI and automation consultancy business. We focus on the Snowflake data platform. So we work exclusively with Snowflake. But I think very much in the context of this discussion, we work a lot with retail businesses. And in fact, my background is working for 20 plus years within the retail industry. So hopefully come from a reasonably informed vantage point to add to this discussion today.
Fantastic. Well, a little bit of context at the start, the challenge around AI and agentic AI and how to cut through the noise in the marketplace at the moment. That's the challenge, because everyone's talking about it. But let's zoom in. For your business specifically, the topic of data readiness will be front of mind, particularly in all of your Snowflake-related conversations.
Yeah.
But what does data readiness really mean in the context of agentic?
So it's really interesting, actually, isn't it? And I dare say as we go through this discussion, we'll go over a bit of history of what's gone before. But data readiness, it means a few things. So if you think about what have retail businesses traditionally used data for, traditionally it's been about dashboards and BI. And the data in that context, it only ever really needed to be good enough for a human to interpret. But in the agentic era that we're now in, the agent has to act on the data, right? And often without any kind of human in the loop, potentially. So it has to be able to not have a human checking that each step is valid. It has to be able to trust, the data has to be trustworthy enough to act on the business process directly. So that's one aspect of data readiness. And when you then broaden out the term readiness, what does that mean? Well, it means data is accessible. It means that it's well defined in business terms. It means that it's governed. It means that it's real time and that it's machine interpretable, and machine interpretable in a consistent way. But just to go back over a bit of history, when I started my career, the term AI didn't even exist, right? So how did my colleagues within a buying and merchandising function know that the product information that they were uploading into the system would be one day in 25 years' time to use for agentic AI purposes? They didn't. So that data readiness is all about the things that I've just described. And fortunately for businesses like Clekt, but perhaps challengingly for certain retail businesses, it's a prerequisite. You've got to get your data ready. It's not a follow-on project. And retailers are getting this right. They're treating data as a unified, governed foundation that you build before you can deploy agents thereafter.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I guess with that as well, on the point that you're making there about conventions for how data was handled and uploaded.
Yeah,
I guess there's a process of rework around all of that historical data structures now to make sure that in the agentic era you're actually able to use it in certain scenarios. So there's probably a bit of enrichment required, isn't there, to make it work in the best way possible?
Yeah, there is, and actually the tooling now is catching up with the problem. So platforms like Snowflake have native functions within their platform that mean you can sort out data in a way that historically you would have needed a data analyst to get really in and amongst it and sort it out at a field by field level, and that just isn't the case anymore. So there is the opportunity exists for retail businesses to accelerate their data capability and really get after this agentic era that we're in now.
No, absolutely. What would you say when you're talking to retailers currently? What are the scenarios that they're looking to optimize for or capitalize on within agentic?
There are two fronts, I guess, that agentic AI is being considered for. So the first is in a customer facing capacity. So agents shopping on behalf of your customers on the outside. And then, so as in on the outside of the retail business itself. And then the second scenario is internally. So agents acting inside your operation. So whether that be, automated buying, replenishment, pricing, product attribution. So those are the two sort of broad fronts, I guess, that agentic AI is being considered.
There's an element of that. I know that the protocols are always shifting and moving and changing. And I know AI made some changes recently around product feeds and certain things were deprecated from it. But just as an example, for agentic commerce and people being able to find products within agents. I mean, how do you see product feeds needing to change to meet the needs of new agentic protocols? And how do you think the retailers can cope with the moving tectonic plates of the protocols all the time?
The honest answer is, how do you create the foundational structure that is adaptable enough to evolve with the protocol movements, as you've rightly described? I think, there are a few different areas to be considered there. So the first is, again, going back to the dashboard of BI example, traditional product feeds, really, they were built for keyword matching and human eye scanning, weren't they? Whether that be on a web page, a results page, whether that be on a dashboard, whatever it was built for human interaction with the data. But for this era of agentic AI, it's the machine that's now interacting with the data, and therefore the data structures need to be cognizant of that. And in terms of the visibility of the data, the timeliness of the data, and to your point about evolving protocols, this means that data needs to be live and queryable in near enough real time. No longer is it acceptable to have overnight batch processes, lengthy overnight batch processes updating that product information. It has to be there at the point of need. And that's the agentic decision. That's not the human decision. It has to be there. And this means that these feeds that are real-time governed endpoints, as opposed to an upload from an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it might be, are a necessity rather than a desirable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. It also makes me think about, lots of conversations we'll have with retailers. You're unpicking legacy whilst in the midst of a transformation project a lot of the time. And that's where a lot of the progress can come.
Yeah.
How do you see it we've talked a lot in this quarter so far about the agentic advantage and how to get it.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to this question, but maybe you have some insight from talking to retailers. So a retailer now that starts up, let's say an e-commerce retailer that starts up, and the opportunity to build its data foundation from scratch, as opposed to the retailer that's been there for 30 years, trading bricks and mortar and at the birth of e-commerce.
Yeah.
Is it an opportunity now for new to market retailers to kind of blueprint an agentic strategy quickly?
I think it definitely is. I mean, the tooling certainly exists to facilitate that from the get-go, from a greenfield position, without a shadow of a doubt. But irrespective of whether you are a new startup retail business or a well-established retail business, actually getting the value out of agentic AI, it kind of needs to start with the decision and not the technology. So what's the high value workflow that's really going to benefit from agentic intervention? So, replenishment, range planning, markdown optimization, what is it? And pick that and make sure that it's aligned with ultimately the customer value proposition that your retail business represents. And then think about how agentic AI can be overlaid in that context and how it can be measured as well. So I think that applies equally, as I say, to greenfield retail businesses as well as well-established global brands.
And a lot of what we're talking about there is agentic insight and the ability for you to interrogate your own data, customer product performance data, to actually determine the questions that you should be answering within the business to get to the answers faster. And I guess that could be a nice way to think about it in terms of what are the strategic interventions that we need to make in the next 6 months for our customers.
Yeah.
Well, let's use agentic first to go into the data to find out those things and what are our priorities, and that could be a nice route to it.
Very true. Yeah, very true indeed. And again, certainly the technology can facilitate that level of understanding to arrive at your starting point. So where are my problems within the data? Is it data structures, data quality? Is it the skills and capability that I've got around my data that's preventing me from understanding how to embed agentic capability into my business processes? What is it? But yeah, you can use a mix of technology and understanding of the retail operation end to end to determine where the start point is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess from your experience, where we think about the kind of more traditional model where you will have the retailer, the board, the trading team,
Yeah.
the BI, and the analysts.
Yeah.
So what does agentic AI need from the data layer that traditional BI dashboards and sort of handcrafted models from analysts didn't?
It's unilateral trust, I think, in the data. Trust in the data has never been more important than it is now. And I've sat in hundreds of trading meetings in the past where different stakeholders around the board table would be debating the same number and determining that their version of the number was the version of the truth and that the other stakeholders' version of the same measure wasn't right. But you then put that in an automated, or in this case, agentic setting. Well, you've got to be able to trust the data because the agent's acting on that data. So it's that foundational trust that's absolutely core. And then moreover than that, there is the opportunity to bind together structured and unstructured data so that agents can reason over product reviews, product images, supplier documents, commentary from contact center, commentary from what store colleagues have said, and make a useful retail decision in a way that just hasn't been possible before, or it was possible, but it was human led. And therefore there was probably a layer of bias attached to the decision that was made. So making certain that underlying truth is unilaterally understood and unilaterally trusted before moving forward to embed agentic processes is absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, and that point you make there about trust, we'll come back to that in a second, but I think that structured and unstructured data piece is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So there have been arguments. I'm from a marketing background, so you've forever been discussions about viability of your distribution of your marketing budget across brand or performance. Is it above the line, below the line?
Yeah.
What's doing what? And everyone would always claim a larger share of the of the result, and you can never really truly get to the nub, even with really complex attribution models. You can never truly do that.
Yeah.
But here, I guess, if you've got structured or unstructured data and you want to answer a question like, for example, what's the correlation between the sentiment of our business in reviews over the past year with our category sell-through in category X, layered in with the price competitiveness against 3 of our nearest competitors and their promo cycles, give me a commentary on that.
Yeah.
You could never get that a couple of years ago. Not a hope.
Absolutely not. And I was at a conference recently, actually, where, to draw a sort of similar example, the brand in question was undertaking social listening through their social channels and was listening to how their customers through these channels were describing the products that they were selling. And they were then taking those product descriptions using agentic processes and attributing their own product data internally so that they could then market that data in a language that their customers were talking about their product in through their selling channels, which again, just couldn't have happened, or couldn't have happened at scale, should I say, a few years ago.
No, although, you'd have, I remember being in the meetings from the other side of the fence where you'd be there 6 months, voice of the customer strategy. Eventually it would get layered into the next year's campaign planning. But I guess now you can be week to week on something like that if you've got the data organized.
100%. But it does come back to this trust point, right? I think trust, whether it's humans trusting the data that they're seeing in the management information that they're consuming, or agents trusting the data so they can perform an optimal action, having that kind of lineage and traceability built in is really, really key, so that you can literally demonstrate the trust. You can demonstrate that the data has come from source and it can be trusted. I think that's absolutely key.
I think people would be really interested to dive in on that trust point in terms of what are the drivers of trust, or all the factors of trust by which we would measure that we're in a good place or not a good place when it comes to being ready for agentic.
Yeah,
the data.
I think if we talk about retail overall, we need to recognize that the consumers of that data come from a variety of different backgrounds. So you just described your background in terms of being a marketing expert amongst many other areas of your expertise, but your heritage is in marketing. So mine's in technology, but not technology at a sort of deep set coding level, technology in terms of how do we leverage technology for commercial gain. But then you've got people who are creative, product specialists. We've got finance stakeholders. We've got people who specialize in customer relationships. And nobody wants to be speaking in a deeply technical language when we're understanding the data. So I think having that data, that common understanding of the data in a language that everybody understands, is the most important factor. So when we do talk about, in retail terms, net sale, or we do talk about sell through, or we do talk about single view of the customer, what does that actually mean? And is it in a way that we can understand it? And is it in a format that we can digest and interact with? So that's one of the core components, I think.
Agreed. We're spending a lot of time talking at the moment around our product Ask Affinity, the agentic insight platform. I think one of the crucial parts of that is the semantic layer. We've spent a lot of time talking about, you be in a trading meeting and you've got a CMO talking to the CFO. Everyone's got a different point of view and a different lens. What's our profit? Reports pulled up and it's gross profit. Is it gross profit? Gross margin? What's the language? The minute somebody uses a term that is adjunct or different to what the person is actually asking, they're turned off. They don't trust the output. So the semantic layer for us is about, it's almost like that. What is that glossary of language that is used within that business that needs to be created over and above as a data layer to create the guardrails, so that when somebody asks a question, it knows what the business language is. And I think crucially, you get alignment on that.
Exactly. I had a really good expression the other day, which resonated with me. And that was, make it answerable in language and callable by tools. So if I'm asking questions of my data in natural language, I want the answer to come back in a familiar tone. But equally, I want that same data to be powering my agentic processes in my business. So the technology can call from the same data set. Exactly.
If we did a study over 2 years in business, retail, in trading meetings, that agentic insight delivered well could actually start to reduce the influence of ego in the room, because actually, all you're doing is helping each other make better decisions and not arguing about it in the end.
Exactly that. I will ensure that I retain my professional integrity by not going over past examples, but I completely agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, surface the facts and make the right decision for your customer and for your business. The data can do that. We don't need to bring ego into it. Egos don't need to enter the room, but inevitably they do it on occasion. Yeah.
Well, I think they're not always bad. You need good, strong voices in the room to get things done sometimes. But equally, I think it's important that, I suppose, to take the joke out, but it's trying to make sure that the question that gets answered is the right question.
Absolutely.
Question from the person with the loudest voice.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
And I firmly believe that, because trading meetings, like the little set piece can be, you get your information, maybe you get your pack not too long before the meeting. It could be the night before.
Yeah.
You read through it, think, God, right, my position, my job, my salary, everything around that, my team and everything that I know that's going on. I need to create the optics around that to make this favorable or reduce impact. You're not necessarily focused on solving the problem. You're solving a problem, but you're solving yours first predominantly. So I think it could change the dynamic of meetings like that and create much more of a collaborative, strategic environment amongst leadership teams if done right.
You're right, particularly if you can create the culture where everybody implicitly trusts in the data that they're being presented with. Because from my experience, half the battle has been coming up with a number that everybody aligns behind before the business decision is actually made, taking us back to an earlier point. But yeah.
We're talking about best practice and getting the data structure ready, ensuring there's a semantic layer that talks the language of the business. So there's been a lot of talk over the last year or two about businesses, retailers rushing to implement an AI strategy.
Yes.
What do we want AI? What do we want it for? Don't know, but we need it. Strategic. Have you seen to the point at the start of the podcast where we're talking about rush to implement AI has led to the integrity of it and the output of it not necessarily being great, and it's actually caused more problems, and there's lots of cleanup as a result. Have you seen that in your first-hand experiences with clients in terms of sessions you've had or examples you've come across?
Not so much, actually. I think the majority of customers that we've worked with have been really quite considered about the stepping stones that they feel they need to take in order to unlock the value attached to AI, whether that be agentic or otherwise. So they've been quite measured in their approach. And I think a lot of that measured approach has been about the potential impact or the perception of the impact of AI on the humans that are working within their businesses, right? So the hype would have you believe, particularly in global tech businesses and global consultancy businesses, that AI is hugely reducing the workforce. And I think the customers that we've worked with really don't want that to be the case. They might see it as an opportunity that opens itself up in the future, whereby as they get natural attrition of resources, they decide whether they want to backfill the resource with the same skill set or evolve the skill set into something new. But very much our customer base are considering AI as what we at Clekt call assisted intelligence. So that being augmenting the potential of the human that's in the loop by equipping them with tooling to make them more effective at doing their jobs.
I couldn't agree with you more. Lots of the conversations I've had about it, who talked about AI done well with a very highly skilled person is like the Iron Man suit.
100%.
You become Tony Stark thing, you know. I think that's kind of a nice way to look at it, I think, because if you think about how it can augment and optimize not only your output, but how you manage your working week.
I mean, hopefully I'm not speaking outside of school, but I know that HyperFinity, you've invested internally a lot in your own AI capability, as have we at Clekt. And what we feel is that it enhances our culture because we get a higher level of role satisfaction by trusting our teams to use the tooling, and by consequence, their output's more effective. They feel better in the roles that they're performing, and hopefully it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. And the same ought to be true of the retailers.
Yeah, certainly. I would agree. I think OKRs and such are always really important in a business to keep everyone on a path. But I think having innovation always attached to the core of people's work, it's making a big difference. People have different aptitudes like they do with everything else in terms of their ability to adopt. But
of course,
I think it's an amplifier of experience. So I think the whole thing about people being made diminished, I don't think it's true at all. I think if you've got 20 years experience in a subject matter, the things that you can produce when you have AI or agentic insight enabling you, it's
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because it's about providing the right prompts, isn't it? And experience enables you to provide the right prompts. So
exactly, yeah. Well, on that, the interesting topic, a lot when we're thinking about innovation within AI and you're looking to, let's say, so some of the things that I look at doing, I'm kind of hobbyist in it as well as doing it during the day, but we've got a campaign concept. We want to create a really cool, interactive, personalized piece of marketing material for a client. Got a few ideas for that. Let's upload some ideas. Let's create it. Let's create a project pack and everything like that and produce the outputs. And it's amazing what it can do. It's phenomenal. But around that, in terms of IP, governance, I think actually, if we zoom in on governance, I think that's an important point. We've talked about trust.
Yeah.
So if you've got a team that's looking to enable their business by adopting AI, how do you make sure that what you feed in it there's a layer of governance around it, and that it's safe for the business? You're not giving up IP or sensitive financial info, all that kind of stuff. What's your watch outs and your go-to plan for something like governance?
Yeah, I mean, let's bring it back to the retail context, and I think retailers thinking about governance when AI starts recommending action, what should retailers be thinking about? Well, I think the first thing is that governance as a word has a bit of a stigma attached to it. Historically, when I've thought about governance, it means I'm going to slow everything down. But it doesn't. I'm going to get tied up in red tape. It doesn't need to be that. Governance in this context is an enabler. It's not a handbrake. It's governance adds to trust, and it's the governance and trust is exactly what lets you deploy agents with confidence and enables you to scale them. So governance is, in that context, is an accelerator. It's not a handbrake, right? And then but broadening out that term, governance, and control with a small c. So control where you're managing risks as opposed to control where you're being autocratic in how you are deploying this stuff. But it's about, you mentioned OKRs, it's about keeping a human accountable where it matters. So that's about determining deliberately which actions an agent recommends and which it's allowed to execute on. So building up that confidence and trust over time, and not constraining that growth, that value creation opportunity by keeping it stifled and dumbed down. It's about encouraging experimentation, but controlled experimentation, again with a small c. And then prove that it works, roll it out, but roll it out with well-scoped parameters where you can truly manage and measure the success that comes with the deployment.
What's it called? I was speaking to UI expert in my network who's deploying AI, and a lot of his work at the moment. Is it called the double triangle, where you start out with a big problem and then you work it through to conceptualize what it is that how you're gonna solve it, and then you scope that out, and then you go back in and grow it out to the solution. I might have got the reference wrong there, but I think it's a strategic technique, isn't it? Where that's the kind of thing that you mean there. It's having a strategic way of working around a problem where you use effort in a proportionate fashion to solve the problem, and then when you know how you're going to solve it, you can do it safely.
It's exactly that. I mean, we within Clekt deploy our own proprietary frameworks internally to determine what we think the impact of our agentic adoption is going to be, and we measure that. We'll prioritize that as a working group team, and the same principles can apply to any business of any size and scale.
Well, from a retailer perspective, if we go to a big question, so we want to go full Nostradamus now. So in 2 years' time, what do you think retailers winning with agentic AI will have been doing differently with their data?
I think those that are treating data readiness and those who are having the board level discussion and treating it as a priority now are going to be the winners. It's those that are investing in the foundations early and not being bombarded with lots and lots of different demos, and just accept that some of the unglamorous foundation builds will actually stand them in good stead into the future. That doesn't have to be an onerous process, far from it. And as I've mentioned earlier, some of the technologies that exist now take that onerous layer away. But what do you get as a consequence of doing that? You get a single governed source of truth that the whole organization can then depend upon and rely upon, whether that be humans relying on the data or whether that be agents relying on the data. You described it earlier as that semantic layer. It is exactly that. It's how do you get your business terminology omnipresent across your organization, exposed to all members of the team, the human team, and all members of the agentic team. And they will make that data through technology enablement. They'll make that data discoverable to agents. And that will be agents that are underpinning and enabling use cases that have been prioritized by humans. And to come back to a point we've mentioned a number of times, they'll be measurable. We'll be able to see the tangible business value that's created. And they'll have moved from experiments into cooperations. So they'll be deploying agents at scale and seeing the benefit of that, but they won't have constrained the experimentation, because this is experimentation into perpetuity, right? This is not going to slow down. It's just going to accelerate, and you need to embrace that. But they will have kept their cultural DNA through their people at the center of all of this. I refer to it fondly as assisted intelligence, and I really stand behind that term. It will be every member of the retail business understanding how artificial intelligence can augment the way in which they work, and they'll be culturally embracing it.
Point well made. I firmly agree. And there's the question one of my former colleagues had put on LinkedIn, almost like a public question, was saying, do you think in the next year or two that business org charts should have AI agents in them because of the way that it's changing? I mean, it's probably an HR nightmare, that, but at the same time, I think from what you were saying there is, if you've got, let's say you've got, 5 or 6 really great people in your pricing around your finance team, your commercial team, then building agents to augment them, fantastic. If you've got a brilliant marketing team, the core team, then you've got your loyalty agents, you've got your promo agents, you've got your, all of these kind of things. It's entirely logical, isn't it? To almost map out almost start with the end in mind is the point of getting that, is that when you're thinking about data foundations, how do we need to build the foundations?
Yeah.
Well, we need to build them to fix these 4, 5, 6 standard retail set pieces. Yeah. And if you work from that, you're in a good place, I think.
100% agree with you, Tom. Exactly that. Exciting times that we're in, though. And yeah, I couldn't think of a better time to be in and amongst this subject area, and for retailers to truly differentiate and take advantage of what lies ahead, because it's huge opportunity for everybody.
It's massive.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate you having me on to this.
No, real pleasure. Great conversation. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers.